My name is Melissa, and when I first started potty training my daughter Mariah, she had been potty training for a little bit, but we hadn't been taking it too seriously. She was just starting to get curious, just would sit down every once in a while, when I was, in the bathroom, or she just wanted to check it out and investigate. But, around the time she turned 2, she started really taking potty training seriously. And about a month after she turned 2 years old, I was on the toilet and I was on my period at the time. She had seen my Kotex, and because she was sitting down across from me, so I have the toilet, I'm sitting at the toilet and she's sitting across from me, and I'm sitting there singing the Tinkle song. I'm like, mommy pee-pee in the pot, mommy pee-pee awful lot. And then she sits there and she's like, me, now me. And I'm like, Mariah, pee-pee in the pot, Mariah, pee-pee awful lot. And then she started peeing, but she looked a little bit uncomfortable. And like, she was like this. And I didn't know if maybe her butt was, I just figured she was just getting comfortable, that she was just moving her butt as she peed. I'm starting to think about, the signs later, before I didn't really pay attention or see them. I just thought, and I feel awful, as a mom, you feel like a failure for not paying attention to those signs sooner. But at that moment, she saw the period blood on my Kotex, and asked me if I had an owie, and I told her no, that it was normal, that, that's something that happens to women as they get older, that it would happen to her when she was older, and, it doesn't really hurt too bad. It causes cramps sometimes, but it's not usually too bad, unless you're unlucky, but it's normal. And I just explained that to her, and she was like, oh, okay. She didn't seem too concerned at that point, but then she immediately looked down at her vagina and like was pointing to it, and she said, Papa owie. And I was like, what? And she goes, Papa owie. And I just immediately I'm just like, in my mind, I just like, everything drops, your stomach just drops. I dropped to my knees and immediately got down eye level with her, and I was like, what, Mariah, what are you trying to tell mommy? And she starts touching herself and pointing at herself, and she says, Papa owie. And I was like, Papa gave you an owie? And she said, yeah. And I go, where did Papa give you an owie? And she goes, right here. And she points to her vagina, and that's when I immediately call her dad, who was at work, so I FaceTimed him. And I said, Mariah, tell your daddy. And, at first she was just like, what? And I said, Mariah, tell your dad. And we're sitting there in the bathroom, and, I have her on the FaceTime, and she's sitting there, and I was like, Mariah, where's your owie? And she points there, and she goes, and I said, Mariah, who gave you owies? And she said, Papa. And her dad saw all of this. And so then I'm like freaking out. I was like, well, what are we gonna do? I was like, something happened. Why is she saying this? And he goes, did you call your mom? And I said, no, I haven't called my mom yet. You were the first person I called. And he goes, you should probably call your mom, which was the biggest mistake ever, because clearly my mom's never, I was a victim of child molestation as well. My mom denied it with me. So that's why I instinctually reached out to dad first. Most people probably would call their mom. I reached out to her dad first, and he told me to call my mom, so I did. At that time, I call my mom, and I tell her, what's happening. And, I didn't want to keep pressing Mariah to reenact it over and over again. So I just explained it to her. I knew that William had already seen it. And I didn't think much of it at that point because I knew that dad saw it. I didn't feel like I needed to show my mom for her to believe me. I don't think at any point she didn't believe me, but she did try to say that, it was probably just normal toddler behavior. And I immediately was like, what? I'm thinking, you're a preschool teacher. How could you tell me that that's normal toddler behavior? Mariah's saying that, Papa gave her an owie on her vagina. And I was like, I think we should take her in to see a doctor. And she was like, well, I think it's normal toddler behavior. And I'm like, my mom's been a preschool teacher. She works with toddlers for years at Noby's preschool in Costa Mesa. Um, I probably shouldn't be saying that. I'm not sure if I'll get in trouble for that. But my mom, she is a preschool teacher. And I feel like if that's something that's going on or that my mom's been aware of, I feel like the preschool should know. I have notified the preschool. I've left reviews on Google. I've tried to get in contact with the director. They will never give me a call back. And to me, I find it highly concerning that you're in, you know, Orange County, very high, very high class area, and a lot of people pay really good money to go to that school. And I'm wondering, what is it that they don't? I've spoken with multiple directors, and I'm not grasping why they have. If my mom wouldn't protect her own granddaughter, what makes them think that she would protect another child if they came to her with this? And as a mother, how could you do that? Like, I immediately tried to reach out to as many people as I could and ask, like, what should I do? What should I do? And nobody seemed to think that we should do anything. And I went crazy. I should have taken her to the doctor myself. I 100% agree. I didn't have a car at the time. I don't have a car. I don't drive. And my daughter, I'm reaching out to her, my grandma, who's a preschool teacher who has education in early childhood development, who's telling me that it's possibly normal child behavior. And nobody told me that there's a child abuse hotline. Nobody said, hey, maybe you should discuss this with someone. Yes, I should have researched it. But as a victim of child molestation myself, I immediately started to shut down. I immediately didn't want to believe it myself. If everyone's telling me I'm wrong, I didn't want to believe it. I was hoping I was wrong. And I feel awful. I told her dad, and I said we should go take her to the doctor. And he said, okay, if you want to take her to the doctor, let's do that. And I said, when can you do it? Because he worked sometimes 80 hours a week. He would work between 40 to 80 hours a week. I mean, not 40. He would work between 60 to 80 hours a week. And so with me not driving, and I had my 1-year-old as well. So and with COVID and everything, and also, the gratuity of the situation, I didn't feel strong enough to go on my own. I was very distraught. I was very distraught. And I was shook. I did not want to find anything out by myself. I was afraid what would happen if I got that news and their dad wasn't there. If I would even be able to maintain to bring my kids home. Now, we never ended up making it to the doctor. It just ended up getting pushed under the rug. And every time I would bring it up, people just, stayed silent. No one really took it very seriously. And my ex just acted like, oh yeah, no worries. Like, it's just because you have a mental illness. I have anxiety. I have severe anxiety disorder, and I have bipolar disorder. Now, bipolar disorder, there are times some people do experience like paranoia or delusions or psychosis, but that does not mean that anything that happens to that person should just be tossed to the side because, oh, it could be a part of their psychosis. The point is, too, bipolar psychosis does not usually last or perpetuate. It's something that happens in an episode, and it can usually be dealt with pretty relatively quickly. It's not something that you really hold on to. It's, you go through a little blip of an episode and then you come out of it and you're fine. It doesn't continue to exist in your mind at that point, and a lot of the times people don't even remember. Now, it's not a delusion. So if you're trying to convince someone that it is, what does that say about you? And if you look at the statistical facts, if you go to the National Sexual Abuse website, which is RAIN, or you you do any research on mental illness and how people with mental illness end up victims of rape, sex trafficking, and things like that a lot more than one who isn't, it's because they like to use the mental illness against you and say that you're crazy, that you're not credible, that, you know, you have delusions, or, you know, you're just making it up in your head. And if you look up the statistical facts, is oftentimes those delusions, they're repressed memories from your experiences of the past. And they're not actually delusions. They are the fact that you're around that abuser. They're now coming back. Those memories are coming back. Say, like with my father, when you just constantly feel like they're in that, just because of like the things that they say, or a little thing will trigger you. Now, me sitting there potty training my daughter and just taking a regular pee in the bathroom with no trigger whatsoever, on a regular day, having fun with my kids, while my daughter's, you know, napping in the crib, my youngest, there's no reason, there's literally not a thing that could have triggered that. She's asking mommy if she has an owie because she saw her period. It's not delusion. They act like because I have an emotional disorder, I'm blowing it way out of proportion. Now, my ex, he physically saw when I called him, FaceTimed him while he was working. And now, for about 2 to 3 weeks after, maybe even 4 weeks, my daughter was, then when we were potty training, she reverted. We stopped potty training for a while. She was not after that point, and she wanted to have her diaper changed again. And then after that, she would lay on the diaper changing mat, and like there'd be toys within her reach, and she would grab those toys as I'm changing her diaper. She did it while she was being changed by her father as well, and she would grab those toys and start trying to put them inside of herself. And in the morning when she would wake up, she would demand her papa. She would wake up throwing fits for papa. She would say, you know, papa, and I would wake up in the morning and be like, Mariah, you want a bottle? And she'd like, papa. And I'm like, you want a bottle, Mariah? She's like, I want papa. And she would scream. And then I'd say, we're not seeing papa today, Mariah. You saw papa a couple days ago. Today's not the day to see papa. She would scream. She would yell. She would throw fits, kick her legs, throw her hands. And I would call her dad, and I'd be like, what is going on? Like, I can't handle this. She's screaming and throwing fits for papa, and I don't understand why. And that's when, you know, I started putting a little bit more of the pieces together, and I got really, really hesitant to allow her around her grandfather or grandfathers. My dad as well, not just her paternal grandfather. I was always hesitant of my father around my children, unsupervised. I made sure that never happened. I always made sure that there was someone with my children if my dad was going to be around. The only person that was a papa that my daughter Mariah was ever alone with was the paternal grandfather, her father William, his dad. Now, the issue with that is, you know, I already had an instinctually bad feeling about this guy from the beginning. Just naturally instinctual. The first time that I met him, I just really felt uncomfortable around him, and I did not want to be around him anymore. After that first very time meeting him, I immediately just felt, I told his dad too, I said, I don't know what it is about your dad. He makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to be around him. And that was literally the first time I'd ever met his father. And, you know, flash forward a little bit backtracking, when my daughter was first born, you know, around the time that she was like 4 months old, she started going over to her grandpa's a couple times a week, and then dad would go over there and pick her up and bring her back home to my mom's house. And but at that time, my daughter Mariah, she was being bathed. She was clean when she would go over to her grandfather's house, and she would have clean clothes every time. She would go over there freshly dressed, her hair done, her shoes on, fully bathed, fully dressed, and every single time he would he'd spend time alone with her, and then when she would come home, she would have been bathed, and she would have had her clothes changed. And every time there was an excuse for something. It was, her diaper leaked. Okay, well then maybe you should be changing her diaper sooner, so that it doesn't leak, because that doesn't happen with us, but that's besides the point. Or she pooped on herself, or she got too dirty from crawling around on the floor. I'm sorry, but babies crawl. You don't just give them a bath. You can change their clothes, or whatever, but if they're going home anyways, why not just let them up? That's what happens. Kids get dirty. That's why you give them baths and change their clothes at the end of the day. Not middle of the day, like excessively bathing a child every time you see them. So that struck me as off. But, I just, whatever, let that slide. Eventually, my mom had to have a talk to his dad and just say, this is weird. Stop bathing her. Missy doesn't like it. She's asked you not to do it. I'm, at this point, I don't know why you're doing it, because Mariah's been getting baths and she's clean. And my mom also started getting kind of offensive, as if we weren't taking care of her. And then, after that, he stopped bathing her for a while, but then, every once in a while there would be an excuse. But I'm sorry, if you put your child in a daycare, they're going to come home messy. They're going to come home sticky from, whatever they were eating at school. They're going to come home with paint all over their clothes from art projects and glitter everywhere and glue in their hair. And, you'll find, random specks of glitter wherever, for days behind their ear, under their armpit. And that's just normal. That's going to happen. They're going to come home covered in mud. They're going to come home, their shoes are going to be dirty. It's just normal. But you don't put your kid in a daycare and expect the person that's watching them to give them a bath before they come home. And I guarantee that my child would have gotten significantly dirtier at daycare and still had to go home, because it's not like he was pulling out all kinds of paints and everything, and glitter and everything else. And even still, why would you bathe someone else's child without their permission first? Especially as an adult male, why would you bathe a baby girl without someone's permission first if it's not your child? He did not reach out to me, the parent, the mom, did not reach out to his own son, the dad. He did not reach out to his wife, the grandma. He did not reach out to my mom, my daughter's other grandma, the maternal grandma. Not anyone did he reach out to and say, hey, would it be appropriate if I gave Mariah a bath? Would it be appropriate if I gave her a bath? And when asked to not give him bath or give my daughter bath, he gets defensive and acts as if it's though his right. And the paternal, my ex, their father, does not take this seriously at all. At all. He thinks that it's totally normal, totally okay for his dad to be getting defensive as to being able to put his hands on naked little girls' bodies, which he has been doing, taking it upon himself to do without permission from the time that my daughter was 4 months old. And I'm sorry, that's not normal. For anyone, I would not bathe my brother's child without asking him if it were appropriate first, if he was okay with it. I would call him if I was watching, hypothetically in any situation, my friend's child or anyone else. I am not going to bathe someone else's child without their permission. That is illegal. It's illegal. And I would call and say, hey, your kid, we were playing, they got messy, they're covered. I don't know if you want them coming back like this. I tried to wipe them off, it's not really helping. I don't know if you want me to put them in the car like this. Do you think I should give them a bath? And let the parent decide what they want. I would never take it upon myself to bathe someone else's child without their permission. And then when my daughter first starts potty training, all of a sudden she's saying that her papa is hurting her vagina. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, actually. That's not normal behavior. That is not normal behavior. No one can say that it is. Now, I don't find it appropriate that my kid's father is still allowing my children alone with his father. I don't. They've taken me to court and taken my kids away at this point and called me delusional to protect his dad. I had reached out to his dad and said I knew what happened and that I was getting me and my kids into a domestic violence shelter to get us the help that we needed and that his family needed to leave us alone. And that was my mistake. And the day that I reached out to him to tell him that, I was sleeping with my kids. We were laying down to take a nap. I said, you can stop texting me now. I reached out to both the father and the grandfather. I said, I'm laying the girls down to take naps. They are falling asleep, and your text messages are preventing them from being able to do so. So I blocked their phone numbers, and I stopped responding. And I fell asleep. 20 minutes later, 20 minutes into our naps, my 2 and 1 year old's naps, we get a knock on the door from the police. And I break down and I tell the police everything, what had happened to my daughter in the past, what has happened in the future, and everything else. And the police I broke down, crying, and I was like, I'm sorry I haven't said anything sooner. I've been trying. I wanted support. I've been reaching out. I didn't know what to do or the steps to take. And my ex and his dad had already, gotten to bias their opinion from the fact that, they called first and said that I was delusional, that I was thinking that, something or other. They were afraid for my children's well-being. And they removed my children from my care that day and immediately placed them in the care of the paternal grandfather who I literally had told them what was going on. This is Orange County Social Services, and this is Tustin Police Department. That was April 1st. They literally removed my children from my care and immediately placed them with the paternal grandfather. And then you wonder why there's people out there that thinks that social services is part of the child sex trafficking trade. Aren't they supposed to be protecting children? Wouldn't you want to place them with someone pending the investigation and not the person that could possibly be abusing the child? It's mind-blowing. It's absolutely baffling. And I can't believe it. And since then, my ex has sent me, text messages about how his dad walks in on him in the shower and makes fun of his pubic hair to the point where he's so ashamed that he feels the need to shave it. And I have already had conversations with my ex in the past. Sorry, I gotta get my cat down really quick here. Get down, Raven. I've had so many conversations with my ex in the past about his past and everything. And as a victim of trauma myself, you recognize the signs. There had been one time that we had been drinking prior to, any of my daughters being conceived. When we first started dating, we went out to the bar and played some pool, went back to his house and started, talking. And he told me that he had thought he had been molested as a child. And the next day he took that back and put himself back into denial. And I let him. I always just waited for him to come around on his own time. Until my daughter started showing signs, and I realized that he was not ever going to come out of his denial. And I had waited and waited and was there to help him and support him in every way possible as long as I possibly could be. He's allowed my own abusers back into my life and my children's lives, and I just couldn't tolerate it anymore. It became too emotionally destructive. Now, there's some things that my ex has done, but this is about my daughter and her father. I mean, her grandfather. This isn't about me or my ex. It's not about my ex and my daughter. There are issues where I feel like her father has sexualized her in the past, but I don't want to get into that because the only person that my daughter came to me and told me was hurting her vagina was her grandfather. She's never come to me and told me that her dad was hurting her vagina. And so I cannot vouch and say that he did something to her. Her grandfather, she came to me and told me that Papa was hurting her vagina. And this is the man that has constantly excessively bathed her. And when asked to stop doing it, gets entitled and says that he's a good grandfather. I'm a good grandfather. How dare you ask me questions? How dare you question me on this? It's not your right. It's none of your business. That is my daughter that was in my womb. If you think that it is not my business to know who is around her when she is naked and you're getting defensive about it, you need to be put away because you are a problem. And I'm sorry, that is just how it is. Especially if you're going to be sexually demeaning your own son into embarrassment, to where he feels like he needs to shave so that he looks like a little boy forever when he's around you, so that he can please you. I am telling my children's story. They're gonna need help. They're stuck with their grandpa. They don't understand. My daughter's 3.5 years old, and I have a 2-year-old. They don't understand. They're very beautiful little girls, and I'm reaching out to the world at this point for help, to help share their story and to help get justice and bring justice for my daughters Mariah and Madalena. And there is a petition online on change.org. I have a link to it in my bio. It tells you a little bit about what I went through with my past as well, and about my mom and the preschool situation, which, like I said, I have reached out to her work on